Hi guys, and welcome to my channel, Ezra McKinley's case. I'm going to put some more audio up of the case and some video that I have. But there's something that Ezra said about the order of the stabbing. Now, she has told a few different stories of what happened through the trial and on her interviews, her video interviews with the police and so forth. And so did Jason tell his story on the stand. But you got to remember, guys, there's some things that wasn't allowed in, couldn't be mentioned, and neither parties could ask certain questions and so forth. You know how it is. And some things that were not read out loud, like I said in my last video, the jury got to read it but not out loud, and all kinds of things were going on. Now we know that she was very, very prepped for the case, too prepped. She concentrated on answering the questions with no emotion, no regrets, not a tear. Her voice didn't shake. She was just kind of dead inside. Now, she never once said sorry. I am truly sorry. She never cried. She didn't even fake cry. Okay, guys, not even a fake cry. She was too prepped, and it was uncomfortable. And you know, Jason, we had to listen to him, correct? Roger that one, and so forth. But if you listen to the first part of this video, and then listen to the rest on this video. Now, you'll hear the story change while she's telling it. I mean, she lied. Completely lied in the order how it happened. Now, the first part we're going to get when the prosecutor asked her what happened. Well, remember, guys, I don't want to give it away yet, this little part, but he asked her, and she did say that one stabbing happened outside the car, right? But who had the knife? Who had the knife? Well, you're going to listen to this part, and then I'll be back.
Yes.
So now your testimony was that you got the knife out by kneeing Alex in the groin, correct?
That is correct.
Let's talk about where you were when you stabbed Alex various times. First off, which hand did you hold the knife in?
I assume it was my right hand.
So you were holding the knife in your right hand, correct?
Correct.
All right. And if I understood your testimony correctly, there was one time you stabbed Alex when he was outside of the car?
Yes.
And that was in his side?
Yes.
Which side?
I can't answer that.
Okay. You don't remember which side?
I just remember reaching around and stabbing Alex, yes.
In the side?
Yes.
All right. And he had his coat on at the time, correct?
Yes.
And you also stabbed, the rest of the times you stabbed him, he was in the car, correct?
Correct.
He was on top of you, correct?
No.
You stabbed him, when you stabbed Alex in the side of his head, he was in the car, correct?
Correct.
When you stabbed him in the genitals, he was in the side of the car, correct?
Yes.
Right. When you stabbed him 3 times in the left side of his neck, he was inside the car, correct?
That had happened in the car, yes.
Right. When you stabbed him the other 2 times in the left side, he would have been in the car then, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And when you stabbed him in the stomach, he was in the car, correct?
Yes.
When you stabbed him in the right leg, he was in the car, correct?
I don't know precisely each wound. I just know all of this happened in the car, yes.
And, well, and you were here when Dr. Mills testified to where Alex was all stabbed, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you stabbed him then the 2 times in the back when he was in the car, correct?
Yes.
And the 3 times that you sliced across his neck, he was in the car, correct?
Correct.
Where was Alex in relation to you specifically when you stabbed him in the head?
He was facing me.
Right. How close to you was he?
He was very close to me.
Within inches?
I can't tell you within inches. He was in front of me. He was face to face with me.
You could see his face?
Yes.
All right. And you said you didn't have your glasses on at the time, correct?
Correct.
All right. So if you could see his face, he was probably pretty close to you, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you stabbed him using your right hand, correct?
I stabbed him, yes.
And you said you were using your right hand to stab him, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And when you sliced him across the neck those 3 times, was he also?
I'm going to object to sliced across the neck 3 times, and it's been asked to answer.
Well, in a different way. You may proceed. Overruled.
All right, well, let's do it this way. When you sliced him across the neck the first time, he was right in front of you then as well?
I don't remember distinct separate times.
Okay. Well, when you sliced him across the neck then all 3 times, he was right in front of you, correct?
Yes.
Within inches?
I don't know within inches. He was
What?
in front of me.
Okay. Again, you could see him at that point in time, correct?
I can see a person is in front of me. It's if I can see detail or not.
Just so that we're clear, you took the word boy and carved that into your arm yourself, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Did you take off that blue flannel shirt before you did that?
I believe so, no.
Right. Did you cut through this blue flannel shirt to do that?
Yes.
Right. Did you take off the blue, and I'm sorry, I didn't understand exactly what you said. It's spotted, or it's not spotted, it's actually got something else on it.
It appears to have small plants on it.
Okay. Did you take that shirt off before you carved boy into your arm?
No, I hadn't taken my clothes off.
All right. So you just cut through those shirts?
I cut through a shirt. I don't remember if my other shirts were pushed up or if something else was in the way. I remember cutting through my blue shirt, yes.
I'm sorry?
I remember cutting through my flannel, my
Okay.
outer shirt.
And the other shirt was underneath it, right?
Yes.
And the spot where you had boy carved into your arm was up almost to your elbow where it started, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And actually, Your Honor, just so that we're clear on it, Could you switch to my computer, please? I'm showing Exhibit 317 at this point in time. That's your arm, correct?
Correct.
All right, and it appears to be almost up to your elbow where the B starts, correct?
It's lower than that, but it's near, yes.
All right, and then continues down to about probably halfway down your forearm, correct?
I would say the word itself is in the middle of my forearm.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so after you did, and you were, I think you said by the trunk of the car when you did that?
Yes.
All right, and after you did that is when you took off running from there?
Yes.
All right, down that muddy road?
It was stumbling, falling. It wasn't like I was running, but
Okay.
running in a sense,
All right.
yes.
That's fine, and fair enough. But that's when you took off down the road, correct?
Correct.
And went right from the trunk down the road, correct?
Correct.
Can we switch to my computer again? I have Exhibit 72 up. So can you, and here I'm going to give you a laser pointer. Could you show us on here where Alex was laying down when you left from that area? You said it was by the trailer, so I just want to know exactly where he was.
He was, I don't know, he was in this area.
Okay.
We are going to step out of court once again.
And what vehicle did you leave in?
It's my car.
Okay. And then who was driving?
I was driving.
Okay. And then Alex was in the passenger seat?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what happened?
And then we were driving and I was talking about stuff and he seemed a little upset about some things, and then after that it just kind of gets funky, like in my brain. Like just start to, it's like there's a blank slate. I talked a little bit about like,
Okay.
you probably get questioned and stuff like that. That's what I told him. Is like, I'm sure you might get questioned at some point during the case and things, and he seemed upset about it. But he mostly seemed upset about Jason and I, because he told me like that if I proceeded to talk to Jason, he would be very upset.
physical facts about her injuries tell you that those injuries were not inflicted by Alex in an attack on her. Even just looking at them and understanding them yourself, it's clear. I mean, this, ladies and gentlemen, comes right from the exhibit. I think it's exhibit 195. And you saw this was part of the page that was put up on the screen. And this is what the chapter talks about as parallel, superficial, incised wounds. They're not talking about geometrically parallel lines. They're talking about lines that are going in the same direction, all right, as opposed to, lines that are going all over the place. And you can just imagine if you're kicking and moving and your leg is going all over the place, it's going to be impossible to cut a straight line. Lines are going to be zigzag, they're going to be starting, stopping, they're going to be all over the place. But this is talking about multiple parallel superficial incised wounds. And what do we see on the defendant? Not only do we see that, but we start with this one right here, which the defendant admits she did to herself. And take a look at that in comparison to these on her hand. Very similar depth, very similar looking wounds. Compare them to these right here on her leg. Again, very similar looking, multiple lines. Again, when you consider what the picture in the textbook itself shows, multiple parallel, superficial, incised wounds. Multiple, superficial, incised wounds. And you look at these. Again, multiple superficial, admittedly not parallel, but again, straight lines. Not something that makes sense with somebody who's moving and kicking and moving all over the place, which is the defendant's original story. And I'm not going to, for various reasons, show another one of the pictures which shows the even more superficial wounds in the most sensitive area. But she needs those there because she knows that Plan B has to include claiming that Alex was attempting to sexually assault her, so she's got to put some wounds there. She's got to put some wounds in that sensitive area. But what, ladies and gentlemen, you remember, she said her story to Detective Prock is, I cut my hand when I grabbed the knife. I grabbed it with my hand on the blade and it hurt a lot. This is what Dr. Tillotson says it looks like when you grab the blade and it hurts a lot to get it away from your assailant. And so the defendant's story has to change again. All right? She gets confronted with this when Dr. Tillotson testifies at a hearing before trial. She knows now that story about grabbing the knife by the blade to pull it away from Alex doesn't work anymore. So her story has to change. Her story changes to, I batted at the knife, and then I kneed him in the groin, and that's how I got the knife away from him. Her story changes when she's confronted by the facts. And her story...
Prosecutor Dufour laying out his case. Don't worry, we'll pick up right where we left off after this short break. You're watching Court TV.
Furnace breakdown? Oh no! That could be a $3,300 bill you weren't expecting. Fridge on the front.
Closing argument. Let's get directly inside.
And her story on getting the knife then from there doesn't make much sense because according to her story, her glasses are off. She can't see more than a couple inches in front of her, and yet she's able to find the knife, pick it up, and use it without her glasses. Her story changes. Her story makes no sense. She's not telling the truth. And the physical facts, her own injuries tell you that. And her own injuries tell you how likely is it that Alex could have cut her exactly the same depth, exactly the same way as she admittedly cut herself, when Alex is supposedly doing that through her clothing. Ask yourself, does that make any sense? When we talk about the defendant's clothes and what they tell us about her story, we start with the blood that's on her blue flannel shirt. I'm not going to take it out now, I'm going to take it out in a little bit. There's blood on her blue flannel shirt. And whose blood is on her blue flannel shirt? The defendant's blood. That's whose blood is on that shirt. And ladies and gentlemen, you heard the testimony, you saw the gold sweater. There's no visible blood on the gold sweater. How does the blood get from her skin onto the blue shirt without touching the gold sweater, without leaving a stain on the gold sweater too? We don't have magic blood that goes through that sweater from her skin to the blue shirt. Defendant's story is that she didn't take off any of her clothes, she didn't remove any of her shirts, she didn't take anything off, and she carved the word boy in her arm through her shirt. Now, first off, how do you do that and be able to make a readable word on your body that you scratch into it with a knife through clothes without being able to see what you're doing? But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, here's what she does and where she does it. And look at that in reference. This is the shirt that's closest to her. This is the shirt that is just above this gold sweater or gold yellow tiger shirt, but the one that's closest to her skin on her arm. How do you do this through this hole in that shirt? And if that shirt is pushed up or out of the way, why is this hole there? Hole is there because she creates the scene afterwards. She takes off the shirts, she carves boy in her arm, and then cuts them up to try to fit her story. She just doesn't do a very good job of it. I want to talk a little bit more about her clothes. The defendant's story is that Alex is cutting her through her clothes, cutting her legs. They're going to bleed. We heard that, you know that, and you heard that from the doctors. Those cuts are going to bleed. All right. So you'd expect right next to the cut, where the cut in her leg is, you're going to expect to find some blood. Makes sense. And you know what? We did find blood there. But what doesn't fit the defendant's story is the blood that we find right next to that big cut on her pants leg, right next to where that incision or that incised wound is in her leg, is not her blood. It's Alex's blood. Why is Alex's blood there? When Alex wasn't bleeding when this was supposedly happening. Why isn't it her blood? Her blood is found on this leg, where her hand would be, and her blood is found in a mixture farther away from the cuts in the leg.
Follow Court TV live over the air, uninterrupted. If you're watching television with an antenna, just rescan your channels now to add Court TV. And go to CourtTV.com to see the exact channel position and more ways to watch Court TV in your area. Follow Court TV live over the air, uninterrupted. If you're watching television with an antenna, just rescan your channels now to add Court TV. And go to CourtTV.com to see the exact channel position and more ways to watch Court TV in your area.
because she cuts those clothes afterwards. And she cuts those clothes after she's killed Alex and Alex's blood has gotten on her. And she cuts them when they're not on her. And then cuts her leg so she can create the scene. She also tells Detective Prock, when he's asking her where she's injured, she makes sure that she says, oh yeah, there's a cut on the pants here. I was injured over here on my left leg too, but there isn't one. Because she's trying to match up all the places that she remembers she cut her jeans. She just doesn't have a cut there. And still more on the clothes, and here I want to show you the clothes and show you this. Because we got to take a look, and it's a muddy area where we're at. And what do the clothes show us? Start with this yellow t-shirt, Alex Mengel's t-shirt. It shows us mud right here. There's mud on this yellow t-shirt. Shows us there's mud right here on this blue, what was described as spotted, but what she said was a plant shirt. And it shows us there's mud on this blue flannel shirt. But what it doesn't show us, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't show us any mud at all on the gold sweater. None. Ladies and gentlemen, considering that physical fact, the fact that there is no mud on that sweater, and yet there's mud all the way down to the yellow tiger shirt, that tells us that her story that she never took any of those clothes off is not true. Because how does the mud get through the flannel shirt, get through the gold sweater, get through the blue plant or spotted shirt to the yellow shirt? Why does it happen? if those shirts don't come off, if she doesn't take off any of her clothes. It gets on there because she has to take them off to carve boy in her arm. It has to get on there because she takes them off so that she can set up that scene. That's why there's no mud on the gold sweater, but there is mud on the blue shirt and the tiger shirt. We need to also talk about Alex's clothes and what they tell us. You saw when Dr. Mills testified how with his clothes, with his sweater, his pants, his underwear, that those all match up. The holes in those clothes all match up perfectly with all of the injuries that Alex suffered. And you saw, and I'm going to show you again, Alex's coat. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Keep the gloves on for a little while because I need to talk about that a couple of times. But Alex's coat, remember, he's got 2 stab wounds in the back. He's got 3 stab wounds in the side. And what do we see with Alex's coat? We see, yep. We've got, I'll do it from the inside. I think it's a little easier to see on the inside. We've got 2 cuts in Alex's coat. Got one right here, the shoulder area, and we've got one right here, in the lower back. That's where we have 2 cuts in Alex's coat. What do we know about cuts to Alex? Where do we know about where he was stabbed? Well, first off, I apologize, not the greatest picture in the world, but this is Alex on Officer Zwiefelhofer's squad video. You can see how the coat covers his side. Goes down, covers his side. It's important because what we know is that Alex has these 2 injuries labeled. And again, the labeling, the numbering, it's just arbitrary. We're not trying to say this was the 15th and that was the 16th injury he suffered. It's just how Dr. Mills marks them. We've got this cut here, and this stab wound here, and this stab wound here. They correspond to the 2 holes I showed you just a moment ago in the coat. But we also have these 3 stab wounds. Sharp force injury number 8, sharp force injury number 9, and sharp force injury number 10. And according to the defendant's story, Alex has his coat on the whole time she's stabbing him. The left side of Alex's coat, you can look all you want, you can take all the time you want to look at it. There is not a single hole in Alex's coat on the left side. Not one. Look at it all you want, take as much time as you want. You're never going to find a hole on that side. So ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, if Alex is wearing his coat, if the defendant's story is he is, how did these 3 stab wounds magically appear in him? They go through his sweater just like they should. But those 3 injuries took place after Alex had taken his coat off. And the defendant's story is that doesn't happen until after she had stabbed him every time she's going to. Her story doesn't fit the physical facts. Her story is a lie. just one more problem. So what does the DNA tell us about what happened on March 22nd? DNA doesn't lie. DNA doesn't have problems with memory. DNA doesn't have issues. DNA tells us facts. And it tells us where Alex's blood is, and it tells us where the defendant's blood is. But maybe more importantly, in many respects, it tells us where the defendant's blood is not, where her DNA is not. Because where her DNA is not also tells us that the defendant's story is a lie. So let's start with the inside of the car. This is a photo that shows, and we've added on to it so that you've got an idea of where things are. What the DNA tells us about whose blood is in the car. Remember, the defendant's story is that she is being cut while she sits in the car. Or not sits, but lays down on the back seat of the car. That the cuts to her leg happen while she's laying down in the back seat of the car. That the cuts to her left hand happen while she's laying down in the back seat of the car. Those are going to bleed. We know that. We've heard that. Common sense tells us that. Whose blood is in the back seat of the car? Alex's. And only Alex's. If the defendant is being cut while she's in the back seat of the car, why is none of her blood, why is not any of her blood found in there? They sampled a lot of locations in there. On the seat backs, all over. None of it's hers. It's all Alex's. If she was being cut there, why isn't her blood there? What does the blood and the DNA evidence tell us about the outside of the car? It tells us, and we've talked about this, I'm not going to repeat it, that the pools of blood are Alex's. But equally importantly, ladies and gentlemen, it tells us, and it's not shown specifically on here, but this trailer, defendant's blood is on two locations, 6 feet apart. You heard that testimony. 2 different spots, 6 feet apart on that trailer. Her blood's there. Her story does not explain why her blood's on that trailer. On that trailer because she's trying to set up a scene. Her blood is also, and while you can't see it in this picture, her blood is on the outside of this driver's side rear door. Big drop of her blood is there. It runs down the door. In her story, that door is never closed. How does her blood get on the other side of that door, a drop of it like that, under her story? It doesn't fit her story. It's not explained by her story. It's explained by setting up a scene later on when the door is closed and before she tries to pull Alex out of the car and leaves him in this position. She's cutting herself, she's making up the scene, and that's how her blood gets on the outside. And her blood on the trunk, we already talked about, that's a spot. She had to change her story to fit the facts.
Follow Court TV live over the air,
What does the DNA on the knife tell us whether this knife was used to cut the defendant, as she claims. What the blood evidence and the DNA evidence on this knife tells us is that, yes, there's blood. In fact, Kevin Scott didn't just do a presumptive test, he did a confirmatory test to confirm that there's blood on the blade. There's blood on the handle of this knife. And what does it tell us about whose blood is on the blade of this knife? Who was cut with this knife? Alex Woodward. The DNA evidence does not say that there's any of the defendant's DNA, any of her blood, on the blade of this knife. If Alex was cutting her with this knife, where is her blood? Her DNA is on the handle as part of a mixture with Alex, where Alex is the major contributor and she's the minor. And that, ladies and gentlemen, makes sense that she's using this knife to stab Alex repeatedly, which we know is the truth. No blood of the defendant, no DNA of the defendant on the blade of that knife. And what, ladies and gentlemen, do these wounds, these deep wounds to Alex's neck that severed the jugular vein, tell us about the defendant's story? They tell us, ladies and gentlemen, that again, she changed her story to fit the facts, to try and fit the facts. It doesn't work very well, but she tried to. Because her story to Ryan Prock on March 24th is that Alex is on top of her when she slices his neck 3 times. Alex is on top of her. And if that's the case, ladies and gentlemen, when that wound starts bleeding like crazy, like it's going to, that blood is going to fall down right on top of the defendant, onto her shirt. She's got to change her story after the fact because Alex's blood isn't on her shirt. It didn't come down when she sliced across his neck like it would have. So she has to change her story and say, no, he's not on top of me, he's in front of me. Changing her story to try and fit the facts. Because the facts from the DNA do not support her story. She's also got serious inconsistencies. And again, the state totally agrees with Dr. Hopper that when someone is involved in a stressful situation, a seriously stressful situation, that we agree, the science is clear, that they will concentrate on central facts. Absolutely agree that if somebody's sticking a gun in your face, you're most likely to concentrate on that gun that's in your face. Absolutely, we totally acknowledge that. But the inconsistencies I want to talk about are inconsistencies either in central facts that would be super encoded, that she would remember without any question, or for information that happens before that stress started. Remember that line that goes up, the stressful event is what starts that process of memory issues. The inconsistencies are relating to what happens before that, when your memory is normal. She told you, her story today is Alex was going to have her one more time. He was going to sexually assault her. But when Ryan Prock asked her about that situation, asked her what was going to happen, she said, well, I just think he was going to look at me. That's probably the first thing that came to her mind when she's talking about it then, but later on thinking about it, thinking, well, geez, No, that doesn't sound really good. I killed him. Doesn't sound great that he was just trying to look at me and I just got these superficial cuts. It'll sound better if I say he was trying to rape me. That sounds a whole lot better. That sounds a whole lot better to protect myself from getting convicted of first-degree intentional homicide. Ryan Prock asked her, why would somebody be cutting your clothes? And she told him, I don't know. Again, a central fact is what's going on here. And later on she remembers and she says, oh yeah, that's right. He cut my clothes once before. That's not something that was part of the stressful event. That's something that happened a long time ago. Supposedly, at least, happened a long time ago. And she doesn't tell Ryan Prock about that. She says, I have no idea. And while I guess probably not an inconsistency where she says one thing one time and she says another, but it's interesting to when you listen to her statement to Ryan Prock about the events of March 22nd. When she's talking to Ryan Prock on March 24th, she says, when I got to that road. That was her, that's what she said. Well, that's interesting language because just think about it, again, using your common sense. When you're driving somewhere, that's how you're going to describe it. But if you're a passenger, it's going to be more like, well, when we got there, or when we, when they got there, something like that. Not when I got there. Sorry about this. Some more inconsistencies. Again, central facts. Actually, the first one is a fact before the stress started. All right, remember her testimony, her story is, I'm in the car trying to find something to get us unstuck. All right, both times when she talked to Ryan Prock in March and when she got on the stand and told her story was she was trying to find something. But when Ryan asked her, did you throw anything out? She said, nope, didn't throw a thing out, didn't throw anything out. Her story changed now to, I threw out the blanket, I threw out the pillow while I was hunting through there. From before the stressful event started, assuming you believe it was that stressful event, before that happens, when things are just being normally encoded, her memories are normally being encoded. Her description of Alex taking off the glasses, she never tells Ryan Prock that. And yet her story changes to that because it has to look better. It has to look like she can't see anything so that her story can be better for her. And her story changes on where the first cuts were. Her story changes on that because remember, she told Ryan Prock, he first starts cutting on my legs. But she changes it, and she has to change it to fit the facts. Because she's got to change it to fit the facts that her first concern was when he's cutting her sweater and then she feels that prick in her stomach. And now she's on alert. That's when the stress starts. She's got to change it to that. The change in her story. Ladies and gentlemen, when you've considered all of those things I talked about, the defendant's credibility is zero. Her story is just that, a story. It's not the truth. It's not what happened. I want to spend a couple minutes, and I don't want to spend more than that because frankly, Alex's journals are a distraction in this case. They're a distraction from what really happened, the defendant murdering Alex. But we do need to talk about them briefly. And I think the first thing you need to think about them is the unreality of the defendant's story about how she first met Alex and first got to know about these journals. And her story on getting the knife then from there doesn't make much sense, because according to her story, her glasses are off, she can't see more than a couple inches in front of her, and yet she's able to find the knife, pick it up, and use it without her glasses. Her story changes, her story makes no sense. She's not telling the truth, and the physical facts, her own injuries tell.
Sharp force injury number 12 to the scrotum that again bled profusely.
In an attack on it. Even just looking at them and understanding them yourself, it's clear. I mean, this, ladies and gentlemen, comes right from the exhibit. I think it's exhibit 195. And you saw this was part of the page that was put up on the screen. And this is what the chapter talks about as parallel, superficial, incised wounds. They're not talking about geometrically parallel lines. They're talking about lines that are going in the same direction, all right, as opposed to, lines that are going all over the place. And you can just imagine if you're kicking and moving and your leg is going all over the place, it's going to be impossible to cut a straight line. Lines are going to be zigzag, they're going to be starting, stopping, they're going to be all over the place. But this is talking about multiple parallel, superficial, incised wounds. And what do we see on the defendant? Not only do we see that, but we start with this one right here, which the defendant admits she did to herself. And take a look at that in comparison to these on her hand. Very similar depth, very similar looking wounds. Compare them to these right here on her leg. Again, very similar looking, multiple lines. Again, when you consider what the picture in the textbook itself shows, multiple parallel, superficial, incised wounds. Multiple, superficial, incised wounds. And you look at these, again, multiple, superficial, admittedly not parallel, but again, straight lines. Not something that makes sense with somebody who's moving and kicking and moving all over the place, which is the defendant's original story. And I'm not going to, for various reasons, show another one of the pictures which shows the even more superficial wounds in the most sensitive area. But she needs those there because she knows that Plan B has to include claiming that Alex was attempting to sexually assault her, so she's got to put some wounds there. She's got to put some wounds in that sensitive area. But what, ladies and gentlemen, you remember, she said her story to Detective Prock is, I cut my hand when I grabbed the knife. I grabbed it with my hand on the blade, and it hurt a lot. This is what Dr. Tillotson says it looks like when you grab the blade, and it hurts a lot to get it away from your assailant. And so the defendant's story has to change again. All right? She gets confronted with this when Dr. Tillotson testifies at a hearing before trial. She knows now that story about grabbing the knife by the blade to pull it away from Alex doesn't work anymore. So her story has to change. Her story changes to, I batted at the knife, and then I kneed him in the groin, and that's how I got the knife away from him. Her story changes when she's confronted by the facts. And we also have lies that are shown by the evidence in this case, ladies and gentlemen. She told you, her story is that this knife right here. This EMT knife that was used to murder Alex Woodworth. That this knife was given to her by Joshane Carlin, her father. That's her story. Joshane, when he's talked to by law enforcement, including Investigator Kowalczyk, says, I didn't give her a knife. And specifically this EMT knife, he says, I bought 2 of these. I just bought 2 of these from Amazon. And he finds this one, the exact match to that knife. Finds this one in his living room where it was supposed to be and says, yeah, the other one should be in my junk basket in the kitchen or out in the truck. And he goes to look for those. He goes to look for it in those locations and he can't find it. He can't find it because this knife right here is lying in the ditch just before Sippel's daughter's driveway. The defendant put it. And if he had actually given this knife to the defendant, why is he looking for it? Because he didn't. She just had taken it. She took it to use it to confront Alex if she had to.
Why build a new high-tensile steel chassis just to lower the driving position 10 millimeters?
Follow court.
And she lied about Max Martinson and the painting that she was giving Max. Remember, she told Detective Prock she gave Max a painting that she had painted for him. That may seem like a minor thing, it's not a big deal. But again, it's part of her attempt to make it look like it's not a big deal that I needed to confront Alex. This is really more what I'm doing. I painted this for Max, and so I needed to take it to him. What we actually know about that painting, though, is that's a painting that's also acting as part of the barrier in her relationship with Jason Mengel, because it's the painting that was hanging above the bed. Jason Mengel's bed where she had sex with John Hansen. And it's part of the barrier in that relationship that she wants so much, that ancient love that she describes. And so she has to deflect attention away from how important the painting is, and she has to deflect attention away from how important it is for her to meet Alex that day. There's more lies from the evidence. Another one, minor one again, but another one that shows the defendant can't keep her story straight because she doesn't tell the truth. Is she said, I was talking to Jason, I was sitting in my car and talking to Jason when the police arrived. Well, you all saw the video from Officer O'Neill. You all saw that video, and on that video, Officer O'Neill meets with Jason over at the school, over at that Montessori school across the road when he first gets there. And then he then pulls over to Alex's apartment. Defendant's not talking to Jason Mengel when Officer O'Neill pulls up because Jason Mengel is across the street. Her story also changes depending on who her audience is.
I apologize. Could you take that down? I can't see the slides. Is that needed still? Sure. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Her story changes depending on who her audience is. Her story changes, her version of the events changes depending on who her audience is. When she talks about moving out of Jason's apartment. When she talks to Jason, she talks to some other people, it's because of the situation with John Hanson. She just can't take that. She can't be there because of that. But you saw that text exchange between Jenna Van de Zandt and the defendant. She tells Jenna, I'm moving out because... Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. With the defendant, there's always just one more lie. Just one more lie. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, really what this case is about.
Judge,
Is the
objection,
defendant telling...
Please be seated. You can continue. Your objection is preserved.
This case is about whether the defendant is telling the truth, whether her story is the truth or not. Because if the defendant's story is not true, the defendant is guilty. Guilty of first-degree intentional homicide of Alex Woodworth on March 22nd. I'd like to start closing argument with a discussion of what's not at issue in a case. And ladies and gentlemen, there's no question in this case, there's no doubt at all, that the defendant caused Alex's death. The defendant killed Alex Woodworth on March 22nd, 2018, when she repeatedly stabbed him. And there's no real question that that action was intentional, ladies and gentlemen, that she intended to cause Alex Woodworth's death. Now you may say, wait a minute, she testified, she said, I didn't intend to, I didn't want to kill him, I didn't plan to kill him, I didn't intend to kill him. But that's not the issue. Because as the judge told you just a little while ago, intent is not just what the person in their mind plans. That's one part of intent. All right, that's one way you can prove intent. If they say, yes, I wanted to kill that person, that proves intent. But intent is also proved if we can show, and if the evidence shows, that a reasonable person at that point in time knows that their actions are practically certain to cause the death of the individual.
Law. Objection. That is not the law. Page 5 says the law. That's not the law.
Because I can't take it with him anymore. She tells Jason in that Instagram messaging, I'm going to see Alex and I'm going to tell him off one more time. You know, if he doesn't, if he gives me that look again, I'm going to punch him. I'm afraid I'm going to punch him. That's why she's seeing Alex, according to her communications with Jason. But her story now is, oh wait, no, I was going to see Jason to fix our relationship, to make us still friends. And to talk to him about what's happening at Racy's. Her story changes depending on who her audience is. And her story changes about the heating pad. She tells Jason, I want to return that because it makes me sad. But her statement to Detective Kroc is, I returned it because I didn't need it anymore. On March 23rd, she repeatedly lies to Detective Kroc when she says she has no idea where Alex's phone is. She repeatedly lies to him over a number of things. Again, where Alex's phone is a central detail that was clearly encoded because it's something she remembers with great detail now. Again, we don't know, we can't know what the central details are, but we can pretty much infer them by the things that she can describe with vivid detail. And she describes with vivid detail taking the phone, walking with the phone, falling down, the phone breaking. This is her story now. So clearly that's something she remembers, something that's a central detail. Yet on March 23rd, she tells Detective Prock, I don't know where his phone is. She doesn't want to send them back to that scene. She does not want them to be back where Alex's body is until she can clean up and be able to follow through on her plan A, which is Alex attacked me at Owen Park. He must have dumped me in that area, and who knows where he is with my car now. She lies when she says she doesn't know where Alex is. She clearly knows where Alex is. She absolutely does. That is a central detail without any question. She knows where he is, and yet she lies because, again, she doesn't want to send law enforcement back there. She wants to keep to plan A. And finally, she lies, a small detail, but she lies when she says she urinated herself. She wants to make herself look like she was really panicked. So panicked she urinated herself. Yet Joe Wayne and Jennifer Morris, who examined the defendant closely, said she had not urinated herself. She wants to make it look that so bad that she had to urinate herself. It didn't happen. So let's take a look now. Let's consider the physical facts in this case. Let's consider what those physical facts tell us, and let's take a look and see if those physical facts support or discredit the defendant's story. Do those physical facts tell us that she's telling the truth, or do those physical facts tell her that it's just one more lie? Let's start with Alex's cell phone. Alex's cell phone is found there, and her story is that she fell while she was walking, and the phone broke, and that's where it's going to be. Well, physical facts tell us that the front of the phone and the battery, which is out of it, are down here. Right here. Much nearer the driveway. And the physical facts tell us the back of the phone is right here, almost to the location of the driveway. Physical facts show she's not telling the truth about what happened to the phone. Didn't break when she fell down. She took it apart, left part there, and left part in a separate location. A defense may say, well, wait a minute. We know there was water flowing there. There's water flowing down, flowing along here. But the water is flowing from in this direction here. From Don Sipple's down towards Louis Bjork's property. And what does your common sense tell you again about this? If water's going to move part of that phone, is it going to move this part that's heavy and going to sink? Or is it going to move this part that maybe is a little lighter and may float along? It's going to make the back, it's going to make the back move, not the heavier part. Physical facts tell us her story is not true. Physical facts about this injury to Alex right here on the side of his head, on the right side of Alex's head. That physical fact tells us the defendant is lying, and was lying when she got on the witness stand and told her story. And why, ladies and gentlemen, it's important to remember the details. And unfortunately for the defendant, she doesn't remember the details. Or at least she doesn't get her story to fit the details. Because she told you clearly, Alex is facing her. He's within inches of her. And the knife is in her right hand. She's holding this knife here in her right hand. Alex is inches away from her while she holds this knife in her right hand, and she stabs him with enough force to go through the temporal bone of Alex's head. And both Dr. Mills and Dr. Thomas told you that takes a lot of force. And ladies and gentlemen, if Alex is facing her, Alex's right side is here, her right side is here. How does she come around and stab him with enough force to go through his temporal bone? No, ladies and gentlemen, the physical facts tell you that this injury right here happened while Alex is facing away from her. And ladies and gentlemen, that does not support self-defense. That supports an unprovoked attack on Alex Woodward. That's what the physical facts tell us. Not somebody's memory, not somebody under stress, not somebody that has PTSD, not somebody that has anything else. Those are physical facts. Those are things that can't be changed. And that right there tells you the defendant is lying. Defendant's story is that except for one stab in the left side on Alex, every other stab took place while she's in the car. That's her story. That includes the stab to the head that we just talked about. That includes the slices along Alex's right side of his neck, slices that were so deep that they cut through the external and the internal jugular vein, leading, as all of the medical doctors agreed who testified about it, said it was going to lead to a lot of bleeding. That includes the cut to Alex's groin that involved a lot of bleeding. I mean, you saw, not only did you hear from the doctors, you saw Alex's sweater, you saw his pants, you saw how much bleeding that is. So Alex is supposedly either in the car or right near the car when that happens. When that slice occurred and all that bleeding, again, it's not spurting blood, but it's heavy bleeding. What do the physical facts tell us about that story, that Alex is in the car when that happens? Well, this is the interior of the car. Now we see a fair amount of blood in here, but what we see is transferred blood that's smeared off of Alex when he sits there after he's stabbed. We do not see any pooling of blood here on the floor, where at that time, according to her story, there isn't going to be anything. We don't see any pooling of blood right outside of the car, and we'll see that in just a moment. No, we see a lot of smears of blood. We do not see that large volume of pooled blood that you're going to see if that's slice across the neck occurred there. But what do we see outside? Outside we see pools of blood here. We see pools of blood here. See, it's not on this picture, but there's another pool of blood you saw up there. That tells you where Alex is when his neck is sliced, when his head is stabbed, when his groin is stabbed, where those pools of blood are. There aren't any pools of blood right there. Ladies and gentlemen, that tells you Alex was not stabbed in that car. Those physical facts, those are not facts that are dependent on somebody's memory. Those are not facts that are dependent or that could be not encoded because of stress. Those are not facts that have anything to do with whether somebody has PTSD or not. Those are physical facts, and they contradict the defendant's story. I also heard about the defendant's license. This is another physical fact. Remember, And I asked her, I said, all right, and this is a direct quote out of the transcript of the defendant's story that she told on the witness stand just a few days ago. All right, and you told Officer O'Neill you couldn't find your driver's license, correct? Her answer was, I think I was having trouble shuffling around. The middle console was full of lots of paper and stuff. She couldn't find her license in there. Well, what do the physical facts tell us about this one? Physical facts show us this is her license here, all right? That's her license on the driver's seat. And what do the physical facts tell us about the center console? She can't find this license in here, in this spot there. That makes no sense. She didn't want to find her license. She didn't want to get her license out because she didn't want to open that center console because she knew this knife was in that center console. She knew this was there, and she didn't want the police to see that knife that were there because that might raise some flags with them. That might raise some concerns that maybe everything isn't all right. That's why she doesn't get her license out. She doesn't want anybody to see that knife. And what do the physical facts about the defendant's injuries tell us? Physical facts about the injuries tell us exactly what Dr. Tillotson told you. We're going to talk about why Dr. Tillotson is credible in a little while. The physical facts about her injuries tell you that those injuries were not inflicted by Alex in an attack on her.
Objection. Can we approach?
Your Honor, the law is if the person knows that it's practically certain to cause death, that is intent.
That's not what he said. Can we approach, Judge? He misstated the law.
Your Honor, this is argument.
All right, this is argument. It's overruled. Your objection is preserved. You make your record after that argument.
And when the defendant stabbed Alex 16 times, she knew her actions were practically certain to cause Alex Woodward's death. And when she left Alex Woodward there, taking his phone so that he has no way of getting help, she knew her actions were practically certain to cause Alex Woodward's death. It's not about whether the defendant killed Alex Woodward, and it's not about whether the defendant intended to. It's whether you believe the defendant's story her most recent story that she was acting, she was afraid. That's what this case is about. If you don't believe that story, then the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant intentionally killed Alex and that she did not act in self-defense. And she is guilty of first-degree intentional homicide.
In assessing and deciding whether or not her story is true, you've got to look at her evolving story. Because her story evolves as time goes on. What's her first story? What's her first story about what happened? It's what she tells Officer Reeves and the medical staff at Mayo. This happened at Owen Park in Eau Claire. I don't know how I got to Menominee. I don't know how I got to Dunn County. This happened at Owen Park. And that's important, ladies and gentlemen. It's important for a variety of reasons. But not the least of those reasons is important because when you use your common sense, you know why she's lying about it happening at Owen Park. And you know why someone who's being questioned by police and others about what happened would lie about what happened. Your common sense tells you that. And the judge just instructed you. It's one of, I think, it's a very short instruction, but it's one of the most important ones. And that's instruction number 195 that says, essentially, when you're deliberating, you can consider your experiences in the ordinary affairs of life. And what that, ladies and gentlemen, really is, it's the instruction that says, you walk through this door over here, you go back to the jury room, ladies and gentlemen, you don't check your common sense at that door. You use your common sense. And what does your common sense tell you about why someone's going to lie to a law enforcement officer? Your common sense tells you it's to avoid getting charged with a crime. It's to avoid getting in trouble. Why is the defendant lying and saying it happened at Owen Park? She doesn't want them to go back to the scene. She doesn't want law enforcement to go back by Don Sippel's house and find that muddy road where Alex Woodworth lies dead. She doesn't want them to go back there because she needs to be able to get back there and clean it up. Get rid of Alex's body before law enforcement finds it. That's why she's lying about it. That's why she's misdirecting them over to Owen Park. And ladies and gentlemen, I know you just heard a couple days ago from Dr. Hopper, and he talked about matters that are encoded and problems when stress events. But it's important when we're thinking about this and thinking about this lie here, that we think about where that lie and what events that lie is about. Remember all that stuff? He showed you that chart, and it's got the line where the stress starts. And that's where memory starts to work a little bit different. It's when that stress starts. And before that, memory just encodes like it normally would, and your memories are going to be like they normally are. And that stress event, assuming that that stress event even happened, or assuming that that stress event, the stress event could be, as Dr. Hopper said, being involved in a murder, that stress has not happened yet when she's pulling into that muddy driveway. So there isn't any issue with her memory at that point in time, and yet she's saying it happened at Owen Park, to direct them away so she can go back later and clean it up. Her story evolves from there to, I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything. Even on March 23rd and March 24th, when she's interviewed by Detective Prock, when from her own story that she told you on the stand, her memory had come back, she's still saying, I don't remember anything. She doesn't want Detective Prock or any other law enforcement officer to go back to that scene. She wants them to stay focused on Owen Park. And finally, when she's confronted with the facts, when she's confronted with information. Detective Prock was talking to her in a calm voice, talking to her in a friendly manner. He confronts her and says, look, you found your car. You walked down that muddy road and found your car. What do you think we found? And now, she's got to go to Plan B. Plan A is, Alex attacked her, he took off with my car, don't know where anything is, don't know where he's at, don't know anything about it. She's got to go to Plan B and say he was attacking her there, and then she stabbed him. And now, all of a sudden, all those facts that, again, using Dr. Hopper's description, are the facts that are super encoded, the critical, the central details of what happened come out. But the story has to evolve even more, and it evolves into the story she told here. Because the story she told them is not the same story she told. We need to take a look at and consider what the defendant does when she leaves Alex's apartment. Remember, testimony from everybody is that they were going to leave Alex's and they were going to go to someplace public. They were going to go to someplace where they could talk, be around other people, so there wouldn't be any issues. Well, what do we know about what the defendant actually did as she drove away? We know, ladies and gentlemen, that she's right here, Alex's apartment. She knows, and there's Half Moon Park right here. There's Phoenix Park right here, a couple blocks away. There's Owen Park that she talked about right here, real close to Racey's, where she wants to be. Does she go to any of those public places? Does she go anywhere near them? No. She takes and drives straight out of town from Cameron to Madison. It all just changes names and drives straight out of town. Away from the public. Away from a location where she can be with other people as she talks to Alex. Because her purpose is not to talk to Alex, her purpose is to confront Alex. And we're going to talk about that in a while when we talk about the defendant's motive. Her purpose is to confront and get Alex to change his mind about the relationship and admit, as she put it, that the relationship was a mistake. She needs to confront him, and she needs to confront him someplace away from people. What about, and you may have forgotten about, Dan Davidson, who testified fairly early in the trial. But what does he tell you about what he sees? What he sees is important for two reasons. It's important because it contradicts the defendant's story, and it also helps to fill in the timeline of what happens. Because Dan Davidson, bus driver at the time for Beauclair, person trained to make observations of other drivers so that he can make sure what they're doing, to watch them, to look at their eyes. Tells you he sees a car stopped in the road, pointed at this road on Louis Bjork's property.
Follow Court TV live over the air, uninterrupted.
On Louis Bjork's property. And he sees two people in there, and he sees a woman driving. Defendant confirms, yeah, I remember somebody driving around me, so the defendant confirms that in fact this happens. And Dan Davidson tells you clearly it's a woman, not Alex, but the defendant, obviously driving that car. Now, I know defense is going to say something like, well, how does he know? And, you know, he doesn't write that clearly in his statement and so forth. But what reason does Dan have to come here and lie to you? That's what he remembers. He doesn't. He has no interest in this case. In fact, he only became involved because he saw law enforcement searching along the ditches there, and he just decided to stop and, hey, there was this kind of weird thing that happened a couple days ago. Just thought I'd tell you about it. Doesn't have an interest in it. Clearly, the defendant was driving. But what else is interesting about that, and what else is strange about that, is remember the defendant's story on the stand. Well, I thought this would be a nice place to go to talk. A nice place to go to talk? Certainly not a public place. Certainly not a place that looks like a good place to talk where other people are going to know. It's private property. It's a deserted area. It's a middle of a farm field. Is that the place you go to discuss continuing to be friends with Alex? Talk more about your relationship with Alex? Place to talk about what's happening at Racy's? Or is it a place to go and confront Alex? A place where nobody else is going to see what's happening. That's, ladies and gentlemen, what this looks like, a lot more than a place to talk about your relationship. So what happens after they start pulling into there? The car gets stuck the first time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, realistically, and again, this is before, as Dr. Hopper tells you, that the amygdala kicks in and you start reacting based upon instinct, habit, those types of things. This is when you still have rational thought. And the defendant still has her rational thought about her. And what does she decide to do? The rational thought is you're on this muddy road and you're starting to get stuck. If you get stuck, rational thought says, I'm going to back out of here and get out of here before I get stuck so that I can't get out. That's what your rational thought tells you if you're just trying to find a convenient place to stop and talk. Despite the fact that there were probably hundreds of places to conveniently stop and talk where there are other people around. But if you want to get to the location where you, over that hill that you heard about, to where you can't be seen from the road, so you can confront someone and confront them and make them do what you want. You want to keep going. You want to move forward. You want to go over that hill and get away from where everybody else is. And that's what the defendant chooses to do. And once they get stuck, the rational thought is, let's get some help. You know, it's going to have to get out of there sometime, and you're going to have a tow truck someday or sometime. Just because it's going to cost some money, rational thought is we need to get out of here unless we still need to confront him. And he'd do that before anything else happens. Now, as I said at the start, this case turns on whether you believe the defendant's story or not. And I want to talk about why the defendant's story is not believable, why the defendant is not credible. There's 5 areas that I want to cover when I talk about that. I want to talk about the lies that she's admitted that she made. Things that she told you or told others were clearly lies. And not, as Dr. Benson talked about, lies of omission, but rather lies of commission, lies where she intentionally deceived someone knowing what she said was false. I want to talk about lies that are proved from the evidence. In other words, lies that, based on other testimony, other evidence, were clearly things that she said that are lies. I want to talk about inconsistencies in her story. And I'm going to talk about inconsistencies not in these peripheral details about things that happened after a stress event, but rather inconsistencies either before that stress started. In other words, changes she made to her story before a stress event happened, or inconsistencies in central facts, as Dr. Hopper talked about them. Fourth, I want to talk about how the physical evidence, the things that don't matter based on a person's memory, don't matter based upon how people think about things, don't matter on whether you believe someone or not, but physical facts, evidence from the scene, evidence that we've uncovered, and how that physical evidence contradicts the defendant's story and says the defendant's story is not true. And finally, I want to talk about the DNA evidence and how the DNA evidence also, which is another form of physical evidence, another form of physical facts, how that evidence also contradicts the defendant's story. So what lies do we know that the defendant told? We know she lied about how Boy got scratched into her arm, right here. This large area of her arm, how that happened. We know she lied about who did that. And we know she intentionally lied about it. We know she intentionally lied about it because she admitted she intentionally lied about it on March 24th. Because on March 24th, when the defendant was interviewed by Ryan Prock, she told him, first in that interview, that Alex did that, and later admitted, again, when confronted by the truth, when confronted by facts that dispute her story, she changed her story and admitted, yes, I lied, I'm the one that did that. Why lie? Why misdirect law enforcement and try and point them over in this direction when you know they should be in this direction? You lie because you're covering up. You're covering up for what you did wrong. She lied about going to Owen Park. She knew, she admitted on the witness stand that she knew she didn't go to Owen Park when she said that. But she lied about it. Misdirected law enforcement. She lied about going to Racy's first because, and the reason why that's important, it may seem like a small detail, but the reason why it's important is she doesn't want law enforcement to know how important it is to her that she talked to Alex that day. But that was the reason why she went against her father's wishes and drove to Eau Claire. That's why she went and found the keys that her father had hidden so she could drive to Eau Claire that day. That's why she went to Eau Claire that day despite not telling Jason the night before in their Instagram messages that she was going to Eau Claire that day. Because she needed to confront Alex. I'm going to talk more about that in a little while. But she didn't want law enforcement to know how important that was, so she said, I went to Racy's first. And changes that story when she's confronted with the facts, when she sees this evidence that shows she's there first. She's at Alex's first. And then her story changes. And she lied when she told Ryan Kroc multiple times on March 23rd and March 24th that she can't remember until she's finally confronted with what law enforcement knows. And at that point in time, admits, all right, you got me, but this is what happened. I also want to spend a minute talking about her evolving story or her changing story on where she was when she scratched Boy into her arm. Because in the course of just a few minutes of her interview on March 24th, her story changes on that. And her story changes because initially she tells Ryan Kroc that she's sitting in the car when she does that. And just a few minutes later, 2 pages later in the transcript of that interview, she says, oh, I did it on the road because I did it right after I fell down and the phone broke. So I was on the road when I scratched Boy in my arm. And her story changed yet again, moved again, when she got up on the stand. And her story then became, I did it when I was by the back of the car. And it's another example of her story having to evolve and change. Because by then she knew about the DNA evidence. She knew what Kevin Scott had found with DNA. And she knew that Kevin Scott had found her blood, her DNA, on the trunk of the car. So now her story has to evolve and change to show why her blood is going to be on the trunk of the car. So now it changes to I scratch Boy in my arm when I'm by the trunk. It changes, it evolves. She can't keep her story straight. Every time she's caught in a lie, her story changes. Another one, Park, caught in a lie, she's not there. I can't remember. Caught in a lie that we found your car. Her story changes. Caught in a lie. You know, story isn't that great as far as self-defense when all Alex is doing is, you know, making some really superficial scratches on her and wanting to look at her. Her story changes. He was trying to sexually assault me. As she's confronted with facts, she's confronted with the truth, her story evolves and her story changes. That's not someone who's telling the truth. That's someone who's trying just one more lie. Just one more lie to get out of being forced to take responsibility for the murder, the cold-blooded killing of Alex Woodworth on March 22nd.
Coverage by Court TV, Ezra McCandless is on trial in Menominee, Wisconsin for the murder of her ex-boyfriend Alex Woodworth.
She fought to survive.
McCandless's attorney says she met up with Woodworth in March 2018 to talk for closure about how they broke up. They drove to a country road, and there, attorney Aaron Nelson says, Woodworth attacked her.
He holds her neck, he squeezes her neck, and he looks her in the eyes. And she just stabs anywhere and everywhere that she can. She is terrified.
Nelson says McCandless was afraid because Woodworth was a nihilist, captivated with violence and cannibalism.
He believes life has no meaning.
When McCandless reached a farm to seek help, the word boy was carved into her arm. In a police interview, at first she said Woodworth did it, an angry reference to the fact that she used to identify as a male, which Woodworth preferred. But police didn't buy her story, and she changed it.
He didn't do that to you, did he? You carved boy into your own arm. Is that right? Okay.
The prosecution says this case is about something else.
This case is about an extreme anger and a twisted form of love.
They say McCandless was sexually involved with 3 men and killed Woodworth in a desperate attempt to recapture the relationship she wanted with another ex.
Throughout this trial, you will see who the real defendant was.
At the end of the strange case, the jury will have to decide whether they believe McCandless's self-defense claim or else convict her of the state's most serious charge, first-degree murder.
I located it appeared Alex had conducted a Facebook search for Ezra McCandless and Jason Mengel on February 17th, 2018. Yes, he also pointed out a folding knife that was on the side table that was next to this same chair in the living room.
And did you subsequently seize that knife and put it into evidence?
Yes.
At the Broadway Street address, she was home at that residence when there at the kitchen counter, John grabbed Ezra with his right hand.
He had me take my clothes off and I let him use me.
How did she describe what John Hansen had done to her?
She indicated to me that he used me. Was there a reason you didn't tell Jason what happened that night or that day afternoon?
I was really ashamed, but I was really afraid.
Just to kind of orient where we were, you got a call from a Dunn County sheriff and you talked to the police the evening of March 22nd and you found out Ezra McCandless was in the hospital, right?
Yes.
And you found out that what they had told you, it's okay. They told you she was disoriented and bloody and muddy, right? You had heard those details?
I heard a couple details.
Yeah, and that she had called herself Monica Carlin, even though they had the name slightly wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And you know that the name she wants to always be called by is Ezra McCandless, right?
Yes.
And that's always what you called her,
Yes.
right? So you went to the hospital that evening, didn't you?
Yeah.
And when you went to the hospital personnel or law enforcement, whoever, somebody didn't let you in to see her.
Well, when I spoke with the people, I mentioned that she had been admitted, and they said that I could probably see her, because I was curious, like, what had happened, if she was all right.
Sure, but they wouldn't let you see her that night. That's all I'm trying to ask you.
Yes, yeah, they wouldn't let me.
You were able to go see her the next day, right?
I believe it was the next day, yes.
And by the time you saw her the next day, she was reoriented to the fact that she was Ezra McCandless.
Objection, it calls for an opinion. Sustained.
When you saw her the next day, she wasn't referring to herself as Monica Carlin. She was calling herself Ezra McCandless if somebody asked her name in your presence, right?
Yeah, when we talked, yeah.
Okay. Now, I think we had talked about the fact earlier that regardless of what you feel now, back in that period of time of March, late February through March 22nd, that at that time you still would regularly express a lot of love for Ezra McCandless in texts, right?
Yeah.
And when you went to a hotel room with her between March 14th and March 16th or the 14th and 15th, whatever the days were, you stayed there with her overnight, right?
Is this the night
This is like
about before?
Pardon me?
The night I was questioned about before, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I was asking you earlier, yesterday you said that you had stayed with her at the hotel, right?
Correct.
And that you and her made love together.
There was intercourse, yes.
Okay. And after that, you know, there were messages, you know, before and after messages of love between the two of you, right? And there were even some talk about her expressing a desire to have children with you, right?
I believe so at some point.
And you expressed that back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, on March 22nd, or strike that. 1 minute. Before March 22nd, she had talked to you about journals that she was writing, right?
Yes.
And in these journals, without getting into the content, but just to characterize the journals, she was expressing her innermost feelings about things and how she felt about her life, right?
I believe so.
Okay. And she had sent you the journals, right?
At some point, yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, she sent it to you a couple different times, right?
I believe I received 2 journals.
And, I see. You got 2 different writings.
I got 2 different copies.
Times. Okay. And she wanted you to read that about how she had felt, right?
Yeah, she was going through therapy and she wanted to express herself.
Okay. And when she was expressing herself as the result of her therapy, she was talking about the relationship that she had with you, right?
I believe there's context about me inside there, yes.
And has it been a while since you've seen the journal?
It's been a long time.
Okay. So I'm just going to ask you some questions about it. So I'm going to show you what's been previously marked and is testified to as exhibit number 365.
Signed spoken.
Correct. And the only portions that we're going to talk about are the portions that you can actually read.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a lot.
Do you need to look at it for a minute or two? I'm not going to read the whole thing out loud.
That's fine. I'm not going to recall things verbatim, though.
Okay, well, if you needed to refresh your memory, I'll just leave it up there for you, okay? In that journal, she referred to her having betrayed the one she loved, right?
I believe she did.
And she was talking about you.
Probably, yes.
And she talked all about the abortion and the terrible feelings she had.
Yes.
The terrible feelings she had about watching, the tray being taken away, which she didn't want you to see.
That she expressed that.
Okay. And she expressed strong feelings of love for you in Silence Broken, right?
I believe so.
And she expressed strong feelings about having been taken advantage of by 2 other people, though she never named their names in that journal.
Yeah, I don't think there's any names in it, but it does.
And so you were aware that not only was she sending this journal to you, she was sending it to someone who she was very close to named Julia Post, right?
Yes, I was aware of that.
And you had met Julia Post? Had you actually met her?
A few times. We weren't really close. I would call her for counsel sometimes if I needed help with the situation I couldn't handle.
She wasn't really part of the Racy's crowd. She was someone Ezra knew from high school.
I don't think she liked the vibe there as much.
Okay. Right. She's a college student and no player. That's how she happened to be around. Okay. And she told you when you talked on the evening of March 21st, or even earlier than that, you had conversations because she told you she wanted to show these journals to John Hanson and Alex Woodworth, right?
She is an Ezra McCandless, not
Yes,
Julia.
I'm sorry, not Julia Post. I'm sorry if I was unclear. Ezra McCandless wanted to deliver these journals to John Hanson and Alex Woodworth, right?
Yeah, she did.
She wanted to tell them through her writing how she was feeling, right?
I think she referred to it as getting her voice back.
I was just going to ask you that. She wanted to get her voice back, and that's what you and her discussed on Instagram together.
I believe so, yes.
All right. And you didn't want her to deliver these in person, fair?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of reckless.
And, well, what you said, if I'm misquoting you, but I think yesterday you said, it's the modern era, she should send them by email. I know those weren't your exact words, but basically summarizing what
There's
you
other
say.
options, too.
Okay. But she wanted to deliver them in person regardless of what you were saying, right?
Yeah.
She told you that, right?
That's what she had expressed.
And on March 22nd, she came to Racy's, right?
Yes.
And You were having I guess the laundromat's probably right by there, right?
It's just on a couple blocks away.
Okay, so, and you're having your laundry done and kind of doing your own thing at Racy's that morning, right?
It was a day off.
Okay. And when she comes into Racy's, she goes past you, you're having a cigarette outside, you exchange hellos, she goes in, gets coffee at the counter, right?
I think they stated she slapped money on the counter.
No. Okay, did you see her? Forget what other people say about what happened. I'm asking you, because you're only allowed to testify right now about what you saw.
I understand that.
So that's what I'm trying to ask you about, okay? Just if I'm not clear.
I didn't see her purchase coffee. I just know she went in. Might have been a transaction, but then she left.
Okay, so there's nothing that you saw about that, right? Her buying
About
coffee.
the coffee? No.
Okay. You knew it was her habit to come in and get coffee at Racy's, right?
She got coffee a lot, but
Right, and you get coffee a lot. I mean, it's a coffee shop.
Judge, he hadn't finished the question. It sounded like he was going to complete his response when defense counsel interjected.
Okay, just let the witness answer the question. Go ahead and answer.
There had kind of been like an unspoken relationship with the baristas, where a lot of times patrons that were there quite often would get a free cup here or there, but she had worn out her welcome for that. So.
Judge, this is why I'm trying to lead him, so.
Okay. All right. So why don't you continue your questioning?
Okay.
And
Mr. Mangle, I'm going to ask you questions and ask you to try to answer what I'm asking. Is that okay?
I'm answering
Okay.
about the money.
So they did give, I was going to ask you about that actually.
Yeah.
They would give free coffee to people a lot, right?
Yes.
You would also buy her coffee sometimes, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so you're saying there was some tension between her and the baristas, right?
Yeah, I think that was her saying she paid her dues.
Oh, okay. And that was particularly between the Wisniewskis and her, right?
The Wisnowski sisters?
Is it pronounced
I
Wisniewski?
believe it's Wisnowski. I'm not.
Yeah. One of them was the manager there,
Aubrey?
Aubrey, right? And she had a sister named Ariel, who also worked there, and they didn't like Ezra, quite frankly.
They often thought about hiring her at first. I'm not sure when the relationship soured.
Okay, but they were the baristas that you're talking about, right?
They might have been on. I don't know who was on the shift at that day.
I understand that. Now, after you were outside with your cigarette, you came into Racy's and you sat down at a table, right?
I believe so.
And then you came over to, I don't know if you call it that, but the coffee bar? It's like a bar, but not a liquor bar, it's a coffee bar.
Oh, like the bench.
The counter.
Yeah, the counter.
And you sat near Max Martinson?
Yes.
Maxwell, right? And Ezra came over and she talked to Maxwell, right? Right?
I believe so.
And the whole time that she's talking to Maxwell, you didn't inject yourself into that conversation at all, right?
I don't recall interjecting.
In fact, you were looking at your phone while she was talking to him.
I believe I was, maybe.
Okay, so you're looking at your phone, you're texting or Instagramming or reading the news or whatever you're doing, but you're looking at your phone during that time.
I believe
right?
so.
Okay. She leaves, right?
Yeah, they were going to exchange.
Right. She leaves, Maxwell comes back, right?
I left to go to the laundromat.
Oh, that's right. You weren't there when Maxwell came back.
No.
Okay. But later on, you decide that you're going to go look for her, right?
I came back to talk with Max, and we had a conversation about, did that seem off? Did she seem off?
Oh, okay, that's not what I asked you. I said, you came back and you decided to look for her at a certain point, right?
I decided to call her father at some point, and that's what inspired me to look for her.
You called her father before you went to Alex's?
I believe I talked to Joe Shane before that.
Okay, maybe not. All right. First, you were going to go to John's to look for her, right?
Yeah, it was pretty far out of town, though.
Okay, and then you change your mind and you decide, I'm going to go to Alex's and look for her, right?
Yeah, it was closer.
Because you didn't want her to be talking with Alex in person, right?
I thought it would be in her best interest to have a keep the peace or something else, someone there.
I understand that. What I'm saying is you didn't want her to be talking with Alex.
I didn't
Fair?
want to stop her from talking with him. I just wanted to protect my friends.
When you went to Alex's, you went there on your bicycle, right?
Yeah.
You didn't just go up and you knew she was there as soon as you got there, right?
Yeah, the car was idling.
Because her car was there,
Yeah.
right? You went by her car,
Yeah.
you went back to the house, when the police get there, you're talking to the police and they're talking to you, right?
Yes,
And you're telling them why you're there, right?
yes.
And they're telling you why they're there, correct?
They didn't specify. They said that someone had called something in. That's all
Okay.
they said.
All right. And they asked you whether or not you were concerned about Alex being violent. You said, I don't think so, but I don't know, right?
I might have said that. This is 2 years ago. You know?
Sure. No worries. So, later on, you found out that Alex was missing, right? Right?
Much later on, yes.
And your first thought was that he had assaulted Ezra and then went on the lam.
I was like, nothing makes sense.
Okay, but that was your first thought, right?
She was injured and her vehicle was missing.
Okay, so after that, let me just say something. Going back to something you testified about yesterday, you were asked some questions by the prosecutor about things Ezra McCandless had told you about sex with Alex, right?
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah, and what you said yesterday was, she told you, I'm not going to quote you word for word yesterday, but you know that Alex did things she didn't like and wasn't comfortable with,
She
right?
had voiced that at moments, yes.
Yeah, and she had voiced to you specifically that things went too fast,
That they went too fast, yes.
and I think the word you used was that there was some choking and boarding, right?
I'm not specifically sure what the terms, or the nomenclatures of the terms she used at the time, but those are the ones I can recall.
And she told you that when she didn't want to do things, Alex would tell her those things were unfair. That was unfair to him, right?
That it was unfair to him, yes.
Okay. Now, getting back to her journal, when she sent you her journal, would it be fair to say that her journal, Silence Broken, was full of hope?
Yeah,
Objection, that calls for an opinion.
Sustained.
You read her writing about hopeful things in her journal, what she expressed as being hopeful.
Objection, the rating stands for itself, it's in evidence, his opinion is not relevant. Sustained.
You once talked to her about being negative, and she told you that if you're negative, you lose power.
Objection,
right?
hearsay. Sustained on hearsay.
In her journal, she wrote about getting, or I don't know if it's in her journal, but you knew she was getting a new job, right?
Yeah.
She was, in fact, getting her TB test or uniforms, W-2s, all the things you need to do when you're starting a new job.
Yeah, I believe she had 2 jobs. She was working back at the school, I believe, walking distance, and then she was getting her TB shot read on a Friday to start another job.
And that was like a nursing home, like taking care of people?
Yeah, I believe
right?
so.
And she was involved with her family. She was living at Joe Shane's, right?
She was looking at Joe's, yes.
Right. And you were Instagramming with her quite a bit on the night of March 21st, right?
Probably, yeah. We talk quite often.
Look at us, heads down, constantly searching for the next big thing. There's a place where the next big thing is actually happening right above you. Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. Look up.
What page?
Madam Clerk, can I please have the elbow on?
Judge, I don't have an objection to...
All right, you have to squeeze in a quick break as we're getting toward the top of the hour. Don't go anywhere. You won't miss a thing. And Court TV Live will continue in just a few minutes.
Tonight on Court TV.
We're live for every moment in the killer-girlfriend murder trial. As the prosecution case winds down, we look ahead to what the defense might have in store. And of course, the big question is, will Ezra McCandless take the stand in her own defense? Does she have to testify in order to explain the chain of events that resulted in the death of Alex Woodward?
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan. Tonight, starting at 6/5 Central on the all-new Court TV.
This is an important message for anyone with Medicare or who expects to join soon.
This card I'm holding in my hand, it's an example of an all-in-one Medicare Advantage membership card.
The kind of Medicare coverage that comes with this simple little card can help you in so many ways.
The Medicare Advantage plan that I've got, it has paved the way for more independence. It's all inclusive. They take care of all my pharmacy, they take care of all my medical, they take care of my doctor bills.
I actually don't even have to pay for a doctor visit, and that's fantastic.
If you're already on original Medicare or you're about to become eligible, you may be familiar with Parts A and B.
Those cover your doctor visits and hospital care, things you'll also get in an all-in-one Medicare Advantage plan. But all-in-one Advantage card holders may get so much more.
I have only one card, and that card helps me with my vision costs, my dental costs, my pharmacy costs, my doctor costs.
Let's scroll a list of the potential benefits that can be covered with this single kind of card. And remember, in addition to all of this, you're still getting the Medicare, hospital, and medical benefits to which you're entitled.
It is not trickery at all when you hear $0. I'm proving in the world.
That's the kind of...
Non-attorney spokesperson. This is a paid advertisement for legal services sponsored.
Wow, it's been quite a contentious cross-examination of Jason Mango at certain points. And where we left off, defense counsel...
I don't have an objection to the introduction and publication of this exhibit. It's already been introduced.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, actually, there's
It
some
has
text
not.
that I think was not
I
introduced.
think this is Attorney Vishny's witness.
Okay, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 687 that the state has no objection to, okay?
And that's already in?
It is not.
This is a different...
This is a different photograph, of a different version of the same photograph. This one has some text around it.
All right, and are you offering this exhibit? That's before we...
Yes, I am
we're
offering
published.
it. I'd move to admit it.
Okay, any objection from the state?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Exhibit
Now-
687 will be received and you may publish.
Now, you were shown this exhibit, I'm not very good at these things. You were shown this exhibit yesterday, right?
I would just ask for clarification. It's
Okay, you
photograph.
were shown this image yesterday in court.
Yes.
That's a picture you took from the Racy's bathroom wall, right?
Yes.
The men's bathroom specifically.
I think there was specific sexes back then, yes.
Okay,
They're
now it's
unisex.
gender neutral?
It's gender neutral.
Okay, but back then they had a men's and a women's, right?
Yes.
All right. And in the men's room, somebody had done this and you saw it and you took a photograph or a screenshot or whatever you want to call it with your phone and you sent it to Ezra McCandless, right?
Yeah, it had been mentioned to me and I
Okay.
let it
Now,
know.
I'm going to, just to be real specific, I'm going to ask you to look, and if you can't see it, let me try to...
The text underneath?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to ask you about, okay? Just let me know if you're having a hard time seeing it.
No, I can read it.
All right. So on the Instagram, it shows, and you're the
Yeah.
author, right? You, Jason
Yes.
Mangle, the Doc Wolf, right?
Yeah.
And you sent this picture, right?
Yes.
And you can see the time, you see the date, March 21st, 2018.
I can see that.
Okay. And you see the time, 23:51:21, right?
Yes.
And that's UTC.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
whatever code.
That's not Central Standard Time or Central Daylight Time, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Judge, I would ask the court to take judicial notice that UTC is 6 hours ahead of Wisconsin time
Any
on
objection,
March
Judge?
21st.
It's Central Standard Time in there. I believe that to be correct. I think this is something we can address. It depends on the time of year. It's either 5 or 6. We have a witness who's going to testify about that.
Okay. But it's not Wisconsin time, right?
Yeah.
UTC used to be called GMT. Have you ever heard of it as that?
The global something time.
Greenwich
Yeah.
Mean Time? In other words, what time it is in England?
Oh.
Right? Okay. And, but that text was sent a little before 6 p.m. Wisconsin time, right?
On the 21st?
Yes, on March 21st.
Okay. 6 p.m.?
A little before 6 p.m. Does that resonate with your memory?
I mean, possibly. I don't know. This is all.
You can't remember the
Yeah.
exact. Okay. After that, there was a phone call between you and her and some brief conversation, right?
I believe so. Was this the night she was at?
She was at
Joe's?
Joe Shane's,
Yeah.
right? So she wanted to talk to you after you said that, right? And the two of you talked, correct?
We talked about. It was.
I just was asking that the two of you
Hold on
talk.
for a second. Just a reminder, just answer the questions that are asked of you. Try to focus on what the question is, and then if you can answer the question, but don't try to interpret the question or give some sort of a preface explanation, okay? Just answer the question. Okay, you may proceed.
After that conversation on the phone, there was some more texting between you and Ms. McCandless, right?
After the phone call?
Correct.
On Instagram, or where are we talking?
What?
On Instagram, or
Yeah,
which
there was
texting?
more conversation. There was more texting on Instagram, right?
I believe there might have been.
And what she told you on Instagram was the words, "Life starts now," right?
Yeah, the conversation we had.
Right. And when she texted you on Instagram, "Life starts now," she sent that to you hour and a half or so, maybe 2 hours or so, but roughly after you had sent her this picture that's Exhibit 687, right?
I don't recall.
Okay. Would it refresh your memory if I showed you the Instagram? When she texted you, "Life starts now," would that help refresh your memory?
Yeah.
Is that all on 394, Council?
Actually, it starts on 395.
Thank you.
Okay, so. You recall these pages are backwards, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. And so the very top of page 395
Is the end of the conversation.
is a conversation, right?
So it starts on here. That's nice.
Yeah, it starts there, but then it goes upwards, right?
Yes,
And, right?
I see that.
And there's a timestamp at 1:32:06 UTC, right?
I see that, yeah.
Okay. And so she texts you at that point, "Life starts now," right?
Yeah, I think we already had the conversation, though.
Okay. And
I might have said that. This is 2 years ago, you know?
Sure. No worries. So later on, you found out that Alex was missing, right? Right?
Much later on, yes.
And your first thought was that he had assaulted Ezra and then went on the lam.
I was like, nothing makes sense.
Okay, but that was your first thought, right?
She was injured and her vehicle was missing. Yes.
Okay, so after that, let me just say something. Going back to something you testified about yesterday, you were asked some questions by the prosecutor about things Ezra McCandless had told you about sex with Alex, right?
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah, and what you said yesterday was, she told you, I'm not going to quote you word for word yesterday, but you know, that Alex did things she didn't like and wasn't comfortable with,
She
right?
had voiced that at moments, yes.
Yeah, and she had voiced to you specifically that things went too fast,
That they went too fast, yes.
and I think the word you used was that there was some choking and boarding, right?
I'm not specifically sure what the terms, like the nomenclatures of the terms she used at the time, but those are the ones I can recall.
And she told you that when she didn't want to do things, Alex would tell her those things were unfair. That was unfair to him, right?
That it was unfair to him, yes.
Okay. Now, getting back to her journal, when she sent you her journal, would it be fair to say that her journal, Silence Broken, was full of hope?
Yeah,
Objection, that calls for an opinion.
Sustained.
You read her writing about hopeful things in her journal, what she expressed as being hopeful. right?
Objection, the rating stands for itself, it's in evidence, his opinion is not relevant.
Sustained.
You once talked to her about being negative, and she told you that if you're negative, you lose power.
Objection,
right?
hearsay.
Sustained on hearsay.
In her journal, she wrote about getting, or I don't know if it's in her journal, but you knew she was getting a new job, right?
Yeah,
She was, in fact, getting her TB test, her uniforms, W-2s, all the things you need to do when you're starting a new job.
yeah, I believe she had 2 jobs. She was working back at the school, I believe, walking distance, and then she was getting her TB shot read on Friday to start another job.
And that was like a nursing home, like taking care of people?
Yeah, I believe
right?
so.
And she was involved with her family. She was living at Joe Shane's, right?
She was looking at Joe's, yes.
Right. And you were Instagramming with her quite a bit on the night of March 21st, right?
Probably, yeah. We talk quite often.
Follow Court TV live over the air.
Can I please have the Elmer one?
Judge, I don't have an objection to,
All right, you have to squeeze in a quick break as we're getting toward the top of the hour. Don't go anywhere.
I don't have an objection to the introduction and publication of this exhibit. It's already been introduced.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, actually, there's
It
some
has
text
not.
that I think was not
I think
introduced.
this is Attorney Vishny's witness.
Okay, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 687 that the state has no objection to, okay?
And that's already in?
It is not.
This is a different-
This is a different photograph of, a different version of the same photograph. This one has some text around it.
All right, and are you offering this exhibit? That's before we...
Yes, I am
before it's
offering
published?
it. I'd move to admit it.
Okay, any objection from the state?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Exhibit
Now-
687 will be received and you may publish.
Now, you were shown this exhibit, I'm not very good at these things. You were shown this exhibit yesterday, right?
I would just ask for clarification. It's
Okay, you were
photograph.
shown this image yesterday in court.
Yes.
That's a picture you took from the Racy's bathroom wall, right?
Yes.
The men's bathroom specifically.
I think there was specific sexes back then, yes.
Okay,
They're
now it's
unisex.
gender neutral?
It's gender neutral.
Okay, but back then they had a men's and a women's, right?
Yes.
All right. And in the men's room, somebody had done this and you saw it and you took a photograph or a screenshot or whatever you want to call it with your phone and you sent it to Ezra McCandless, right?
Yeah, it had been mentioned to me and I
Okay.
let it
Now,
know.
I'm going to, just to be real specific, I'm going to ask you to look, and if you can't see it, let me try to,
The text underneath?
yeah, that's what I'm going to ask you about, okay? Just let me know if you're having a hard time seeing it.
No, I can read it.
All right. So on the Instagram, it shows, listen, you're the
Yeah.
author, right? You, Jason
Yes.
Mangle, the Doc Wolf, right?
Yeah.
And you sent this picture, right?
Yes.
And you can see the time, you see the date, March 21st, 2018,
I can see that.
okay? And you see the time, 23:51:21, right?
Yes.
And that's UTC.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
whatever code.
That's not Central Standard Time or Central Daylight Time, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Judge, I would ask the court to take judicial notice that UTC is 6 hours ahead of Wisconsin time
Any
on
objection,
March
Judge?
21st.
It's Central Standard Time in there. I believe that to be correct. I think this is something we can address. It depends on the time of year. It's either 5 or 6. We have a witness who's going to testify about that.
Okay. But it's not Wisconsin time, right?
Yeah, I believe it.
UTC used to be called GMT. Have you ever heard of it as that?
The global something time.
Greenwich
Yeah.
Mean Time? In other words, what time it is in England?
Oh.
Right? Okay. And, but that text was sent a little before 6 p.m. Wisconsin time, right?
On the 21st?
Yes, on March 21st.
Okay. 6 p.m.?
A little before 6 p.m. Does that resonate with your memory?
I mean, possibly. I don't know. This is all
You
old.
can't remember the
Yeah.
exact. Okay. After that, there was a phone call between you and her and some brief conversation, right?
believe so. Was this the night she was at?
She was at
Joe's?
Joe Shane's,
Yeah.
right? So she wanted to talk to you after you sent that, right? And the two of you talked, correct?
We talked about, it wasn't.
I just was asking that the two of you
Hold on
talked.
a second. Just a reminder, just answer the questions that are asked of you. Try to focus on what the question is, and then if you can answer the question, but don't try to interpret the question or give some sort of a preface explanation, okay? Just answer the question. Okay, you may proceed.
After that conversation on the phone, there was some more texting between you and Ms. McCandless, right?
After the phone call?
Correct.
On Instagram, or where are we talking?
What?
On Instagram, or
Yeah,
which
there was more
texting?
conversation. There was more texting on Instagram, right?
I believe there might have been.
And what she told you on Instagram was the words, "Life starts now," right?
Yeah, the conversation we had.
Right. And when she texted you on Instagram, "Life starts now," she sent that to you hour and a half or so, maybe 2 hours or so, but roughly after you had sent her this picture that's Exhibit 687, right?
I don't recall.
Okay, would it refresh your memory if I showed you the Instagram? When she texted you, "Life starts now," would that help refresh your
Sure.
memory?
Yeah.
Is that on 394, Council?
Actually, it starts on 395.
Thank you.
Okay, so you recall these pages are backwards, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so the very top of page 395
Is the end of the conversation.
is a conversation, right?
So it starts down here. Right. The text.
Yeah, it starts there, but then it goes upwards, right?
Yes,
And, right?
I see that.
And there's a timestamp at 1:32:06 UTC, right?
I see that, yeah.
Okay. And so she texts you at that point, "Life starts now," right?
Yeah, I think we already had the conversation, though.
Okay. And you'd already had the conversation, and she's referring to a conversation she had with her father, right?
Yes.
With Joe Shane.
Yes.
And in that conversation, she had what she told you was kind of a nice, emotional, heartwarming talk with her dad, right?
Yeah, really positive father-daughter moment.
A really positive father-daughter talk about getting her life back on track, right?
Yes.
And that had been what she'd been writing about in Silence Broken, getting her life back on track.
Judge, objection again. The document speaks for itself. His opinion is not relevant.
Sustained.
She ended her journal with these words: "I cannot hurt
Judge,
myself anymore."
Same objection. The court document speaks for itself.
The document does speak for itself. It is in evidence.
It's in evidence, then I'll just put it on the Elmo.
Judge, we had,
I don't think
I'll
only
leave that to
the
the court's
state gets to
discretion.
Hold
refer
on,
to.
we can, just not everybody at the same time.
I'll withdraw any objection there. I'll leave that to the court's discretion.
Okay, if you want to put it on the Elmo, you can put it on the Elmo.
I will do that.
Jury has seen it, but if you want to show
Right.
them the evidence again,
I'm not going through the whole document. I'm only going to go through the last, very end of it, okay? The very last sentence, she says, "I don't accept the past actions, but recognize them and only want to work towards finding who I truly am," right? That's what she said.
Yes, I see that.
And then it goes on the next page, which is what I really want to get to. "I cannot hurt myself anymore." She wrote that, right?
I can't see it yet.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to it. "I cannot hurt myself anymore. I cannot hurt the ones I love." Right?
Yes.
"I can become Ezra McCandless again." Right?
Yeah.
"I can become Ezra McCandless again. I am worth it." That's how she concluded this special journal that she sent to you.
Objection, it's the defense characterizing the evidence.
That's how she sets this journal
Hold on,
up front.
hold on. I'm going to sustain it. It just seems
I'll rephrase it.
argumentative at this point. This isn't closing argument, counsel.
It's nighttime, she sent you a journal, life begins now,
Objection
right?
asked and answered.
Sustain.
Judge, that really, I don't have any further questions, other than life began then.
Okay. And then any redirect?
I just asked that the council's last statement not be, the jury be instructed that not be considered as evidence. That was more of an argumentative comment.
Okay. Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, that is not evidence. That is argument, and that should be at the closing arguments. But at this point, that is not evidence.
I just, Mr. Miggle, I want to clear up a couple things. There was, so in direct examination, you testified that it was the holiday season generally when you tended to Alex Woodworth's cut on his wrist, correct?
I tried to find supporting evidence for that specific date, but I don't.
Is that the best, that's what you testified to?
I didn't have any conversations to base my idea off.
Is that your best recollection?
Best recollection.
Okay. Now, you also testified that the defendant told you that Alex cut his wrist because he said, if you don't break up with Jason, I'm going to kill myself, correct?
Yeah, at some point in the...
So that...
Not that specific day.
Okay, so that's my question. Sometime around the holidays, the best of your recollection is when he had the cut on his wrist, right?
Yes.
And sometime much later is when that explanation was given to you by the defendant, correct?
Yes.
And was that after you found out about the sexual relationship that the defendant and Alex Woodworth had?
It wasn't completely solidified, but I had, like I said, I had my inclination to...
Okay. Now, you said that there was a conversation, so well, let's go to the time in the hotel when you found the text messages between the defendant and John Hansen, and then you called John Hansen,
Yes.
correct? So in cross-examination, you said that the defendant amended it after you talked to John Hansen on the phone, correct?
I was... Both of them.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
And what was the first thing that the defendant told you prior to talking to John Hansen about her sexual relationship with John Hansen?
That it was an assault.
That it was an assault?
Yes.
And then once you talked to John Hansen, how was that amended?
I would talk to him. I asked him what had happened. He gave me a story. I released some details of things I knew. He changed his story. And this between the two parties, I was doing this because I was privy to more information at that point. I just wanted to seek the truth.
So did the defendant tell you more information after you had some conversation with John Hansen?
She told me more, yes. We ended up going for a drive.
And did she tell you information that was different than what she told you initially before you talked to John Hansen?
Yes.
Now, the information that you got about Alex Woodworth saying he was going to kill himself if the defendant didn't break up with you, that came from the defendant, correct?
That came from Ezra McCandless, yes.
Alex Woodworth never told you that, correct?
No, he never stated that it was a suicide attempt or anything.
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay, any recross
Yep.
limited to that redirect?
Absolutely limited.
Thank you.
When you yourself looked at this wound on Alex's wrist, I think as they said, it was the holiday season, right? Sometime in December, right? And you looked at it and you knew it looked like a suicide attempt, right?
Yes.
So whether or not he told you why he wanted to do a suicide attempt, that was pretty clear to you, right?
It wasn't my job to judge him on what it was.
Of course not. But it looked to you like it was. I'm not asking you to be judgmental. I'm just asking about what you saw.
I'm going to object on the opinion and asked and answered. There's been a ruling that he's not an expert to testify in this area.
Sustained.
So guys, I'm going to put the rest of her statements, little bits of the audio up, and some has video of the prosecutor asking her questions in the order. What happened? Of course, we know at the beginning she don't remember a thing. She was in a fog and all what she did. But the thing is, one of her interviews, in her statement, she said that Alex took her glasses off, slowly took her glasses off. And he had a knife in his hand. Remember that? He's the one with the knife. And she asked him, where did he get the knife from? And she goes, well, he must have picked it up on the floor, at the back seat on the floor. Which side, or right or left? No, she said it's in the well, you know, on where you put your feet. Now, you just heard what she said. The first stab came outside the vehicle, and she had to go around, and she stabbed him in the side. So who had the knife first? Correct. She put the knife in her hand first. Now, if you've been stabbed in the side, and this is, we don't really know if that was true, but we know she stabbed him. We know, but it could have, she could have sliced his throat first, because this man didn't fight back, hardly. You know, we just don't really know which order it came in, but she has put the knife in her hand. Why would he go to the car after he just got stabbed in the side? Well, I think he went to get his phone. Now, the story about the phone, you would think that Alex would have had his phone in his coat pocket, because, you know, that's where he put it. Most likely, he's a guy. He had his phone in his coat pocket, or his pants pocket. But she said, she was asked, where did you get Alex's phone from? Where was it? And she said, it was in the back of the car. It was in the car. I don't know what it was doing in the back of the car when he was sitting at the front of the car. How did his phone get in the back of the car? And then she goes on that he blindfolded her and started cutting her, and that's how her shirt got cut. And then she fell, he was cutting her between her legs, and then the fight ensued where she got the wound on her hand, and she was fighting to get the knife off, and she was gonna die. She thought he was going to do what he wanted to do, his will, you know, at his will, you know, reciting poetry as she's saying it. Now, if you guys have listened to all the testimony, you need to listen to all of it and see how deranged she is, right? This woman cold-blooded murdered him. She cold-blooded did it, and it was a plan. It was a plan, and the jury got it right. They got it right. And so listen to the rest of the video and the information, or even listen to the other videos I have up on my channel to make some sense of this. But she's already put the knife in her hand outside the car. So after that, how did Alex take his coat off and lay on his coat and ask her to help him go to the pee-pee, urinate, while he's been stabbed to death? It just don't make sense. Her story don't make sense because we know she's a liar. And it just goes on like that. So listen to the rest of it and leave your comments, and let's have a little discussion on your thoughts. She's such a liar. She's such a liar. And, well, did you notice there was a video clip in here that they were talking about something, and you see her face? Talking about the killing and the stabbing, and her face, not one remorse. She's kind of laughing. Yeah, like, what? But she's going to have to live with this the rest of her life, because we all see the video of the outcome. She couldn't believe it. She thought she was going to get away with murder, but she's not. And she's going away for a very, very long time. And it's first-degree murder in Wisconsin. It's life, but she's got the possibility of parole. But that's up to the judge. And she's going to serve the best part of her life in prison. And, I mean, she's getting life, but it could be 25 years when she can be eligible for parole. It could be 40 years. I don't know what the judge is going to do. But she's only 22. She's going to spend the best part of her life in prison. And she's never going to have children. No, her and Jason are never going to have children. But see, Jason's got on with his life, so he said, but I don't know. Has he? We see the reaction on her face when he first got on the stand. And she's still shining the light for him, so I don't know what's going on there. And as soon as she got found guilty, her bond was revoked. So guys, thank you for stopping by and sub to my channel, and don't forget to give me a big thumbs up, and I'll see you in the comments.